Welcome to the BYD Battery Box Premium online training from EFT-Systems. This training is for qualified electricians and consists of this training video and an online test based on the content of this video. The video and test will take about 1 hour. The online training is valid for 12 months and is needed to get certified and take part in the B Partner program. Every technician that deals with the battery box should watch this video carefully and complete the online training once a year. Regarding the B Partner program, this is a bonus program for installers that regularly use the BYD battery box. To become a certified partner of the battery box, a registration in the online service center is needed, as well as this online training and first registered installations in the registration system. To increase the partner level and to benefit from multiple advantages, further systems can be registered and bonus activities can be used. To learn more about the B Partner program and the benefits, check the information available at the BYD or EFT webpage. This technical training pre-assumes a general understanding of the battery box. The purpose of the training is to provide deeper knowledge of the battery box premium to deal with the product in a correct and efficient way. Therefore, this online training consists of 3 parts. First, some general important information on the battery box support. Afterwards, there will be a detailed look at the 3 different versions of the battery box premium, the HVS and HVM, the LVL and the LVS. At the end, some further helpful tips and tools are addressed. The training now starts with some information on the general support as important documents and tools are provided. On the one hand, you will always find many helpful documents under the bydbatterybox.com website or on the EFT-Systems.de website. Documents like the manuals, data sheets, or the compatibility list, and many more. Besides those documents, there are more tools to get support online at any time. The online service center, the help center, and the service guideline and checklist, which is an important document in case of any problem with a product. Looking at the EFT website, you will find the service guideline and checklist in the download section. On the main page of the EFT website, you will also find our online service center and the battery box help center. First, we take a look at the online service center. Coming from the EFT website, you will get to the login. Here you can either log in if you have already an account or register as a new installer. After the login, you can use the helpful functions. You can register your battery box systems by stating some few information like serial numbers, system configuration, and installation date to do the configuration and have a simple overview of your installed systems. By adding the serial number of the battery modules, you can also automatically collect points for the B Partner program. In the event of a service case, you can add a ticket for the registered systems and check the status of it. Furthermore, you can register extension requests for systems of the previous battery box products so that you can order and get the relevant extension material. The next self-help tool is a battery box help center that you can access through the online service center or through the EFT website. Here you can find easily and at any time the latest frequently asked questions, documents, and information on technical support. After the general support information, we will now look into the product details and start with the premium HVS and HVM. First, a short product overview. The HVS consists of 2 to 5 modules per tower, which are connected in series, whereas each module has about 100 volt. The HVM consists of 3 up to 8 modules, also in series connection, whereas each module has about 50 volt. Up to 3 towers with the same module configuration can be put in parallel. To know which configuration is compatible with which inverter, the most recent compatibility list has to be regarded. Only configurations and inverters listed and released in this list are allowed to be used with the BYD batteries. For other or not released configuration, the warranty will be voided. The latest list can be downloaded in the bydbatterybox.com or the EFT-Systems.de website. After making sure the configuration is correct, we will now look into the installation of the product. For the handling of the battery box, please always refer to the official manuals by BYD available again at the stated web pages. The installation and all other kinds of works or measures in combination with the battery box are only allowed by professional and qualified electricians and according to national and international regulations. The handling of the battery is held as easy and safe as possible, but please be aware that improper handling could cause damage to the battery and lead to dangers. Wear proper safety gear. Here you see the requirements for the installation location. The temperature range is from -10 degrees to +50 degrees. The battery can operate within this temperature range, however, the power will be slightly limited below 0 degrees. The battery should not be placed close to easily inflammable materials. The battery Box Premium HV has a protection rating of IP55. They can be placed outside, however, the battery should not be exposed to direct weather conditions like sunshine, rain, or snow. For the installation, you need two parts and packages of the battery box: the base and the BCU, which is the battery box control unit, and the modules. In the package of the BCU and base, you will find some documents as well as the parts for the wall mounting. In the module package, you will find the module and the screws to fix a module on top of each other. For an installation, you will additionally need per battery box tower the DC cables, the screws and bolts for the wall fixation, a communication cable with cut 5 or higher, and a ground cable. When setting up the tower, it is important not to mix the HVS and HVM modules. The different modules can easily be differentiated by the lines in the front of the modules. One line for HVS modules and two lines for the HVM modules. The BCU is the same for both versions. Here is shown what is allowed or not possible for one tower configuration. Important here is the correct module quantity and to not mix HVS and HVM modules. For the parallel connection, there are also some limitations. Up to 3 towers can be connected in parallel. For this, all towers need to have the same module quantity and thus the same voltage. Furthermore, it is not possible to mix HVS and HVM towers in a parallel system. And again, please refer to the compatibility inverter list to check which configurations will work with which inverter. With those limitations in mind, we look into the installation, which is held as easy as possible and which is shown in principle on this page. The base is placed on the floor and the modules are simply stacked on top without any internal cabling. The modules can then be fixed with screws on top of each other. Finally, the BCU is placed on the top module and attached to the wall. The next step will be the external cable connections on the left side of the BCU. Make sure the system switch is off before you start. Then open the connection area. Here you see the ports available in the connection area. You have the communication port to the inverter, the port for the parallel connection, the ground, the Ethernet port, the DC cables, and the dip switches. First, connect the ground cable. It is important to connect the battery directly to the ground of the house. Do not connect the battery ground to the inverter ground, as this might lead to communication problems. Next will be the communication cable to the inverter. For most inverters, you can choose between two connection options. For all inverters, you can use option C and connect the communication cable by pins. Dependent on the inverter, you might also have the option to connect a communication cable by a normal RJ45 head on the cable. Please always refer to the manual to check how the combined inverter has to be connected. An example for the connection with an inverter is shown in this slide. Here you see that this inverter has two connection options. On the left side, you see the option with the RJ45 cable head. On the right side, the option with the pin connection. It is very important to make sure the connection is done correctly and with the Cat 5 or higher cable. Otherwise, the system might not work. If you face problems, test the cable or try another cable or try the other connection option if available for the inverter. Besides the correct cabling, also the dip switch configuration is important. Different inverters have a different dip switch setting, so please always make sure you are using the setting described in the manual. In this picture, all dip switches are on the left position, but this is different dependent on the inverter. A wrong dip switch configuration could again prevent the system from working, so please always check the correct position of the 3 switches. Next is the optional Ethernet cable to establish an internet connection. It is optional, but we highly recommend it to allow for remote updates and remote service. The DC cable connection is shown here. You can use DC cables with up to 16 square millimeters. After connecting all cables, close the cover. The battery cannot be started if the cover is not closed correctly. On this slide, the connection of parallel systems are shown. On the left side, you can see the connection of 2 towers to be put in parallel. The battery will be connected with a normal Ethernet cable. On the right side, with 3 batteries, you again connect all batteries with an Ethernet cable. Here, however, you also need to change the dip switch position of the middle battery according to the picture. The communication cable to the inverter is then from the master BCU to the inverter exactly as you would only connect one battery. Each battery needs to be grounded, and the DC cables should be collected, and then one DC string will go to the inverter. Here, all DC cables should have the same length and parameters to avoid a difference in voltage on the different batteries. The next step is commissioning. For this, the battery needs to be activated by the system switch on the right side of the BCU. Here, the correct switch on order is important. If there is a switch between the inverter and the battery, that needs to be turned on first. After this, the battery should be started and configured. The configuration of the battery is done through the app bConnect, which can be found in Android and Apple App Store. Make sure to use the latest version of the app. Upon recording of this training, the version is 1.6.7, so make sure the app on your mobile device is at least this version. When starting the app, the version is shown on the same page where the language can be selected. In the next step of the app, the most recent firmware of the battery can be downloaded. Please download the latest app and the latest firmware in the office before you go to the customer to make sure you have a stable internet connection for the download. Also, check regularly if there is a new version and download it. You can pause this video now to check the app version on your mobile device and possibly update or reinstall to the latest version 1.6.7 or higher. After this, please also download the latest firmware inside the app. When you have the latest firmware, you can connect to the Wi-Fi of the battery. The password is BYD B-box, as shown here. Please mind the small and capital letters. When you are connected, update the firmware to the battery. You will see the version in the app and on the battery. For the update, it is important to know that the BCU consists of 2 components, the BMU and the BMS. With the update, you will update automatically and instantly the BMU, which will then update the BMS. This can take up to 20 minutes until the BMS is updated, but you can already continue with the configuration. The firmware version of the battery box, HVS or HVM, needs to be at least BMU version 3.13 and BMS version 3.19. The configuration asks for only very few pieces of information: the current time on the inverter, the battery configuration, the type of use, and phases. After the update and the configuration is done, you can switch on the inverter. Please install and configure the inverter based on the manual and requirements of the inverter manufacturer. In general, the startup procedure for the system should be first the switch between battery and the inverter, if there is any, then the battery or batteries, and then the inverter. When the battery is on, the LED on the BCU will show a status. White blinking is, for example, normal for charging or discharging. A white and blue flashing is normal for the start-up phase or when the SoC is low. But based on the sequence of white and blue blinking, it can also show an error code. For this, the number of blue blinks between white blinking has to be counted. In the service guideline, which will be introduced in some slides, you will find further information and what to do. For switching off the system, it is exactly the other way around than switching on. First the inverter, then the battery. To switch off the battery, the LED button should be pressed for 5 seconds. Then the system switch will fall automatically. If there are problems with the system and it cannot be put into full operation, it is very important to always switch off the battery completely before leaving the system. Here, all LEDs should be completely off. Also, the system should then be put into operation within a few days, or the service should be contacted. Please note that improper handling can damage the battery. If the battery should be extended later or a module is exchanged, it is very important to have a similar state of charge in all modules. As new modules arrive with about 25 to 30% state of charge, the original battery should be turned off at about the same SoC. Then the new module can simply be added. After this, the configuration has to be done again with the new module quantity. After looking at the HVS and HVM, the next premium product we will look at is the battery Box Premium Lbl. Unlike the HVS and HVM, the LBL is a low voltage battery with about 50 volt. One LBL consists of 15.4 kilowatt hours and up to 64 LBL can be put in parallel to achieve a maximum capacity of 948 kilowatt hours, so nearly 1 megawatt hour in a single system. Up to 2 LBL can be stacked to save space. Similar to the HVS and HVM, the correct configuration has to be verified with the minimum configuration list. Please always check here if the planned configuration is feasible. The list can be found on the web pages. As mentioned before, please refer to the manuals for the installation and regard the safety instructions shown here. Here you see the requirements for the installation location. The temperature range is from -10 degrees to +50 degrees. The battery can operate within this temperature range, however the power will be limited below 5 degrees. The battery should not be placed close to easily inflammable materials. The battery box has a protection rating of IP20 and should be placed inside to protect the battery against weather conditions. The battery should not be placed on the side, but always in the correct direction. One battery system consists of one or multiple LVL batteries and one premium LV BMU, which collects information from one or multiple LVLs and communicates as a single interface with the external inverter. To look closer into the electrical components of the system besides the BMU, which is a battery management unit, the LVL has to be opened. One LVL has an upper and a lower battery module. The upper LVL module also includes the BMS drawer, which is a battery management system for the LVL. Both the upper and lower LVL module has one big BIC, which is a battery information collector, which reports the measurement data of the module to the BMS. The BMS then processes this data and reports it to the BMU. For the installation, the upper and lower battery module are stacked on top of each other. Unlike the premium HVS, HVM, and LVS, the LVL requires some internal cabling. Therefore, the cover is removed. Then the cabling can be done. It is important to make sure not to make a short circuit and connect all cables correctly and according to the manuals. The communication cable from the LVL goes to the BMU and from the BMU to the inverter as shown here on the right side. Make sure that you use a Cat5 or higher cable for the communication connection with the inverter. Also, some inverters might require a special communication cable like shown here on the right side. Please check the manual for the correct cabling. Up to 2 LVL can be stacked on top of each other. The cabling concept is shown on the right side. The LVLs are connected with the Cat5 or higher cable, and the LVL with address 1 is connected to the BMU. To collect the DC cables, make sure to use a combiner box or a butt breaker. The same concept is used when connecting more LVL systems in parallel. Once the cabling is done, the system can be switched on by pressing the LED button on the LVL for 3 seconds. To turn the system off, the LED button on the BMU has to be pressed for 5 seconds. Then all LVL should turn off. When the battery is on, the LED both on the BMU and on the individual LVL will show a status similar to the HVS-HVM product. While the BMU shows the general system status, the single LVL show their individual BMS status. Please refer again to the manual and the service guideline for the exact meaning of the different blinking status. When the battery is on and you have the latest app and firmware version on your mobile device, you can connect to the Wi-Fi of the battery and do the configuration in the exact same procedure as in the HVS-HVM product. Also here, we highly recommend to connect the LVL directly to the internet to allow for remote update and remote service. After the LVL, the last premium product we will look at is the Battery Box Premium Lbs. The modular concept is similar to the HVS-HVM. However, here the modules are connected in parallel, so the voltage stays at about 50 volt regardless of the module quantity. One module has 4 kWh capacity, and up to 6 modules, so 24 kWh, can be stacked in one tower. Up to 16 LVS with a maximum of 4 modules per tower can be connected in parallel to achieve a maximum capacity of 256 kWh. As mentioned, up to 6 modules can be connected in one tower. However, it is only the case in a single tower configuration. If multiple towers are connected in parallel, a maximum of 4 modules can be used per tower. Unlike the high voltage systems, in the LVS, also towers with different module quantities can be put in parallel, like shown here for a tower with 4 and with 3 modules. This is possible as the voltage is the same regardless of the module quantity. To check which configurations are possible for which inverter and for which kind of use, please again refer to the latest minimum configuration list available online. As mentioned before, please refer to the manual and the installation and regard the safety instructions. As the Battery Box Premium HVS, HVM, and LVS has the same protection rating of IP55. Therefore, also requirements on the installation location are exactly the same as already described for the Premium HVS and HVM. The temperature range is again from -10 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius. The power will be limited below 5 degrees. For one LVS, 4 different pieces are required that come in different packages and have different part numbers to be ordered. The special LVS DC connector, the LVS PDU that also includes the base, the LVS modules, and the Premium LV BMU. The Premium LV BMU is the same for the LVS and the LVL. The installation of the LVS tower is similar to the Premium HV installation. The difference then is the external cabling and the cabling to the BMU. The principle is shown here. All cables can be attached from the outside without opening the battery. First, the ground cable, which should be directly connected to the earth of the house. then the communication cable to the BMU. As the LVS fulfills IP55, a special connection cover is used to protect the communication cable. The communication cable connecting from the BMU to the inverter is exactly the same as for the LVL and the LVS. Again, dependent on the inverter, this might require special communication cables. For the DC cable connection, the LVS has a special DC connection strategy, which allows to connect the DC cables without opening the battery and still allows for a high protection level of IP55. Therefore, a special LVS DC male connector piece has to be attached to the external DC cable. The LVS DC connectors have to be ordered for the selected cable size and can be crimped to the cable as shown on this slide. Also, pre-configured cables with the DC connectors already attached can be ordered. Then the DC cable connection is as simple as pushing the cable into the LVS PDU as shown here. The parallel connection of multiple LVS towers is shown here in principle. Every LVS has a ground connection directly to the ground of the house. The LVS PDUs are connected with patch cables with each other. The first LVS is connected from COM-in to the BMU with a Cat5 or higher cable. The last LVS uses a terminal resistor on the out port. The DC cables should be connected with a combiner box or a butt breaker. After the cabling is done, the general startup procedure for the system should be first the system switch between the battery and the inverter, if there is any, then the battery or batteries, and then the inverter. The batteries are switched on by pressing the LED button on one LVS module for about 3 seconds. For switching off the system, it is exactly the other way around, then switching on. First the inverter, then the battery. To switch off the battery, the LED button on the BMU should be pressed for 5 seconds. Then all LVS modules should turn off. As for the other premium batteries, if there are problems with the system and it cannot be put into full operation, it is very important to always switch off the battery completely before leaving the system. Here, all LEDs should be completely off. Also, the system should then be put into operation within a few days, or the service should be contacted. Please note that an improper handling can damage the battery. Like in the LVL, there are multiple status LED in the system. One for the system status on the BMU and an individual LED for each battery module. This way, the status and possible error codes can be seen easily. Again, please refer to the manual and the service guideline for the meaning of the blinking. The update and configuration is the same procedure as the other products. Make sure to use the latest app and firmware version. The BMU firmware should be at least version 1.19 or higher. To allow for remote updates and service, please also always install a direct internet connection of the battery. After the details of the individual premium products, we will now look into some additional important knowledge. If the installation was done correctly according to the manual, but there are problems, please always first refer to the already mentioned service guideline and checklist, which can be found at the BYD or EFT-Systems.de webpage. The document contains of two parts, the guideline and the checklist. In the guideline, which is just a few pages, you will find one page with the general steps to always check, and then you will find an error-related section with a clear guidance for different problems. Please refer here to the section that addresses the problem. The document will then guide you and show special tasks like how to measure the battery voltage. If the problem cannot be solved with the service guideline, please collect all necessary data stated in the document and fill the service checklist, which is the last page of the document, and either directly register the ticket in the online service center or contact the service. The contact information can be found on the bottom of the document. One important tool which is also mentioned in the service guideline is a bConnect Plus program. The normal configuration of the battery is done through the app bConnect. However, there is one additional possibility to do the configuration and even get some important information. This is the program bConnect Plus, which can be used on Windows computers and which can be downloaded at the EFT-Systems or the bydbatterybox.com website. The manual for the program is within the download folder. Once a program is downloaded and unpacked, you can download the latest firmware inside the program. Afterwards, the computer can be connected to the battery Wi-Fi. The program can be opened without installation, and the connection with the battery can be established by clicking Connect. With clicking Refresh, the information of the battery will be loaded. With the program, it is then possible to do the configuration or to do the update, similar to the app bConnect. But the program also offers additional functions like deeper system information, diagnosis, and history alarms and messages. In the diagnosis section, the status of the battery is shown and information like the individual cell voltages can be seen. To see and export the history events, first the level of report has to be selected, BMU or BMS. Then the quantity of messages to be shown should be typed in. Typically, type in 300. And finally, those messages can be downloaded. In case there is a problem with the battery, those data are very important and can help to identify the problem and the solution quickly. To extract all information that might be necessary to evaluate the problem, please extract 2 screenshots of the system info and diagnosis information. To take screenshots, you can take, for example, with the Windows program snipping tool. Also extract the cell info as Excel or text export, as well as the BMU historical data and the BMS historical data. If multiple BMS are in the system, please extract the data for every BMS. The detailed instructions how and which data to get can be found inside the short manual of the product. Send this information together with the completed service checklist to the service contact. As mentioned, all those material and information can be easily accessed and downloaded through the EFT or BYD webpage. As there are regularly updates to some of the material, make sure to get the latest versions to benefit from additional functions. Finally, some last service tips that might be helpful if you face any problems. First, always use the material that was just introduced, the service guideline and checklist, and the bConnect Plus tool. In most cases, the problem can already be solved with this. Otherwise, contact the service with the information stated in the documents. Second, the battery box has a modular design. This makes it easy to exchange a faulty part if this is necessary. The exchange is just as easy as the installation of the product. 2 things to keep in mind when exchanging something on the battery box. When exchanging HVS or HVM modules, make sure to care about the state of charge, which has to be the same in all modules, similar to the extension process. After the exchange, make sure to update and configure the system again. Third, the bPartner program is a valuable membership program that will provide many advantages to you. One is that you can earn reward points that you can exchange for useful items. You could, for example, use the points to get some essential spare parts of the battery box. Especially electric components like the HVBCU or the LV-BMU can be easily taken additionally on-site to every new installation as spare parts. This could help identifying and testing a component on-site or solving cases directly when they appear. Make sure to go through the steps of the service guideline before exchanging anything and get all required service information. If the exchange solves a problem, this is important to receive exchange parts from EFT. Fourth tip, you can register service tickets directly in the online service center. Make sure to attach all required information. This will allow for a fast and efficient proceeding of the ticket and a quick solution. That was it for the technical training of the Battery Box Premium. However, there is another product in the addition to the premium range that extends the range for larger systems. This is the Battery Box Commercial. It is a very exciting battery, especially designed for larger projects in which applications such as peak shaving could be interesting. To learn more about this product, please contact a wholesaler or EFT. Thank you very much for watching the online training video. In order to complete the online training, please follow the link to the online training test, which is based on this video. You need to get all answers in the test correct to pass the test. To get the answers, you can repeat this video or check the battery box material available online. You can do the test multiple times, and everybody in the company who deals with the battery box product should watch the training video and pass the test. Thank you very much.